welcome back to Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Today we're delving into another cult watch, Jehovah's Witnesses. This is something that interests me so much. It's always been one of the ones I've been hesitant to cover because I do have friends that are witnesses and I don't want to offend them, but I feel like we need to talk about it. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. I've dug up some pretty interesting facts, I think, and we're going to have a good time, hopefully, discussing some pretty heavy subjects with a little bit of humor. And that's what we do over here. If you're new here, thank you. Welcome to all the new subscribers. I really appreciate it. And welcome back to my loyal subscribers. I thank you so much. It's a blessing anytime that I post a video and people watch it. Whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, it makes me feel happy. It's like a kind of a euphoric rush. I really appreciate it, you guys. You guys and gals, I really do. I'm from the South, so I say guys a lot, but for me, it's gender neutral, so I apologize. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone that's here. A special shout out to my patrons and my channel members. Love you so much, and I will be getting those live chats back up on Patreon real soon. It's a kind of a blessing and a curse that a couple of my clients have increased my workload. So it's a blessing in that it's, a little more money, but also kind of a curse is that I can barely switch in time to research and write scripts, much less do extra videos. So I'm really trying to get kind of a schedule back in order where I can do more. So just please bear with me. Anyway, with that being said, if you're not subscribed, I hope today's the day I earn your subscription. Please hit that below. Also, hit the like button, share, comment. Even an emoji helps out the channel. I really appreciate it. And with that, let's delve in to Jehovah's Witnesses. So, Jehovah's Witnesses. What are they? Who are they? What do they believe? I think we know them most often as the ones that knock on our door sometimes on a Saturday or a Sunday, and the ones that try to kind of come in and have conversations with us. We know them as some of those people. There are also other Christian or Christian adjacent organizations that do that as well, but I think and especially in my area, these are the ones you see most often. We don't have too many LDS in my area, so Jehovah's Witnesses are the ones that tend to knock on doors. So that's what they mean to me, but they are quite a bit more than that. I'm going to call them Christian adjacent because some of their beliefs do not line up with what you would consider mainstream Christianity, so I will refer to them as Christian adjacent in this look. And yeah, they've got some wacky beliefs. So let's first of all dive into their history, shall we? To really understand the history of the Jehovah's Witnesses, we got to go all the way back to 1831. And we have to look at the teachings of William Miller, who formed what is commonly known as the Millerite movement. Now, before people come at me and saying, that's not a direct relation with Jehovah's Witnesses. I know it's not, but some of the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs go back this far. And some of the things they do also go back to the Millerites. So I feel I need to at least mention them. So William Miller was a pastor who believed that the second advent or second coming of Jesus Christ would be in his lifetime, roughly 1843 to 1844. Well, he missed that prediction, but basically he built his following on a belief that the end is nigh, like a lot of other types of religious or even Christian adjacent organizations have. He's responsible for what is known as the Second Great Religious Awakening, and later on as the Great Disappointment when he missed many of his predictions. So his belief that the end was nigh kind of caught on, and from it sprang several other denominations such as Seventh-day Adventists. And along with those beliefs came a Adventist by the name of Joshua von Himes, who pastored a church in Boston, who began publishing in 1842 a magazine known as the Signs of the Times. And he began to basically look at world events and put it into the realm of biblical prophecy with this little pamphlet or newspaper, book, magazine, whatever you want to call it. And it is still actually published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church today as a monthly magazine. So it's these roots in putting predictions and world events into biblical perspective and then publishing it and sending it out to people that the roots of Jehovah's Witnesses actually came forth. And as we move forward from the Millerites, we see more of these publications coming out. For example, the Adventists also published an Advent message to the daughters of Zion, which, Signs of the Times were aimed toward male readers since they're considered head of the household, where you had something relating to the women as well. This came on in about 1845. It continues to be a pretty popular Adventist magazine today. But these Millerite beliefs began to permeate other mainstream denominations. And so that's how you kind of have the history of believing that the end is nigh, the end is in every generation, coming forth into traditional mainstream Christianity. But some of these Millerite beliefs were, kind of thrown out by the mainstream church, but some of them weren't. And we're going to talk about the ones that were kind of unique to the Millerites and the ones that years later the Jehovah's Witnesses picked up on and is still a major part of their religion today. For example, Millerite beliefs, along with Jehovah's Witnesses believes that the majority of prophecies alluding to the Jewish people are often filled spiritually rather than literally, such as the destruction of the temple, the rebuilding of the temple. Even though the destruction happened in real life, they're not expecting an actual rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem over the Rock of the Dome of the Rock, like a lot of denominations are. They are expecting a spiritual rebuilding of that. The whole thing of conditional immorality was big in Millerite beliefs and in some Jehovah's Witness beliefs, because there are things that society would deem immoral that are actually only immoral under certain conditions within the Jehovah's Witnesses, and we're going to get into that. But that was kind of a belief of the Millerites. And then, of course, the seventh-day Sabbath, Saturday. That is huge with a lot of these Millerite-adjacent religions, Jehovah's Witnesses being one of them. And the whole doctrine of predestination actually originated. The predestination, or the 𝗪𝗪, meaning that because many of his predictions failed, William Miller often said that the coming of Christ on some of these other dates, that there was not a physical coming of Christ. It was actually spiritual. And some heard it and some didn't. So there became from this a doctrine of the closed door, which means it's kind of too late. If you're not chosen by now, you're not going to be chosen. And that leaked forward even into some mainstream denominations like the Calvinists, and then on into the Presbyterians. Jehovah's Witnesses kind of have this doctrine because they believe in the whole 144,000. There's that number again. These are the ones that will actually go into heaven. Everybody else will either remain on the earth or be destroyed. So this whole doctrine of kind of the 𝗪𝗪 still permeates through Jehovah's Witnesses beliefs. The actual roots of Jehovah's Witnessism, if that's a word, can be traced back to 1870 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to a man by the name of Charles Taz Russell. So Russell felt that most mainstream Christianity was wrong. He didn't believe in the Trinity. He believed in three separate beings that were not one Godhead. He did not believe that Jesus would be returning in the flesh. It was going to be a spiritual return, and it was on this belief he built many of the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs. He actually believed that Jesus would return invisibly in 1874. And when that didn't happen, he kept kind of pushing out the date. 1914 was a date, and of another spiritual return of Christ. And then he actually pushed, when he joined up with his partner Nelson Barber, he actually pushed that prediction out to 1914 being a spiritual return of Christ, and then the actual end of the age, end of the world, would be at the end of a 2,520-year period known as the end of the gentle times. So he and Barber started publishing a quarterly book known as Three Worlds that basically melded end-time prophecy with world events, just like the Millerites did, and began publishing it. Then later on, they established another religious journal called Herald of the Morning. However, even among dissenters, there is dissent. Russell and Barber actually bumped heads over the whole topic of predestination, that there are some people meant for heaven and meant for hell. And so they started butting heads, and as a result, they split. And those that went with Russell went and started publishing a quarterly publication known as Zion's Watchtower and the Herald of Christ's Presence, showing that we were instinctively in the last days. Now, they at this time still believed 1914 was going to be the end of the world. And so from 1879, this organization known as the Watchtower started gathering in non-denominational gatherings to study the Bible, study the Watchtower magazine, and kind of compare world events to biblical prophecy. In 1881, they formed the Zion's Watchtower Tract Society, presided over by Russell loyalist William Henry Conley, and eventually drew it into a non-profit organization so that you could get all the tax benefits. Although it's a little indescript on what charity or what the actual purpose of this non-profit was. And so they began publishing tracts, just what it said, and they began kind of their whole thing about going door to door. They began leaving these tracts in public places for people to find them, inviting more people to their Bible study, and things like that. 1909, the headquarters of the Watchtower Tract Society were moved to Brooklyn, New York, and they actually stated their purpose at that point as distributing these tracts along with Bibles. And that became their moniker. He called his believers colporteurs. These were the ones that actually went out and left the Bibles, left the tracts, started going door to door. So we see this happening very early on. And by 1910, 50,000 people worldwide were now associated with the Watchtower Society. And he called them, he formed them under another organization known as the International Bible Students Association. So he kind of organized it as a general ministerial and educational kind of nonprofit. And he started sending out foreign colporteurs into other countries. He started recruiting people in other countries. And so you started to see this particular set of Millerite-esque beliefs starting to take hold and spread, even though it was not considered an actual denomination or even a Christian church at this time. By 1914, Russell was one of the most published religious authors in America. And of course, he also missed his end of the world prediction in a way, because nothing happened. But then that's when he started saying, oh, it's spiritual. If you didn't feel it, you weren't meant to feel it. So that's kind of how he sidestepped that. You know, we saw that in 2010 with Harold Camping when he missed his own May. And I have a video about that. I'll link up here. He missed his whole May prediction. So then the next day he said it was probably spiritual. So sidestepping when you miss a prediction is not unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. This is something that you would say Jehovah's Witnesses kind of stopped after this failed 1914 prediction of giving an actual date, but they went to the more generalized prediction of it's soon. Anytime, it's soon. That's why you need the Watchtower Society to watch world events and let you know that it's soon. October 31st, 1916, Russell died at the age of 64 while returning from a speaking tour. And for a few years, the organization kind of went into some turmoil and fell apart until a man by the name of Joseph Rutherford stepped up to take control. And this is where you actually started seeing it shaping as a religion. It went beyond a Bible tract, educational type of organization to now being formed into a actual religion under Rutherford's control. One of the first things that happened with Rutherford was after he was elected he was formerly their attorney, and after he was elected as head of the society, it kind of fell into turmoil for a few months because his election was disputed. Not everybody of Russell's former staff and, inner circle liked him. So there was a lot of turmoil until he was able to finally consolidate his control by firing people, letting people go, throwing people out. That was an early form of, what they call disenfellowshipping people. You see that with Jehovah's Witnesses today. If somebody gives up on the belief, on the religion, they're disenfellowshipped, which means they're shunned. You see this happening in a lot of things like the Amish, Scientologists, things like everything where the religion's kind of hush-hush. They tend to do this to people that don't exactly, fit their mold. It's the same thing in LDS. LDS has a form of this as well. So you see it with a lot of what I would call extreme religions. So after he kind of consolidated power, he took it upon himself to finish Russell's last book. And he called it The Finished Mystery because Russell had, at that time, published several book series called Studies in the Scriptures, and he went ahead and finished it with the studies of the books of Ezekiel and Revelation, also using his interpretation of those books to protest both Catholicism, mainstream Protestantism, and any Christian, anybody that calls themselves or considers themselves a Christian, involvement in what was then World War I, the Great War. So this is the early remnant, the early start of things like Jehovah's Witnesses pretty much withdrawing from society. They don't vote. They don't join the military, the police force, no public service whatsoever, because they are literally believe they are living one day away from the end times. His proclamations caused several Watchtower higher-ups and officials to be jailed under the Espionage Act in 1918, and they were subjected to mob violence. Of course, the Catholic Church and most Protestant churches wrote things about them. Eventually, those charges were dropped in 1920, but it was enough to stir up a lot of distrust about the Watchtower Society. And as a result, the animosity of the people within the Watchtower Society started to grow against the general public, and then you saw more and more rules about basically withdrawing from society. He started centralizing power, and he started emphasizing more on community gathering. So they started using people's homes to do their meetings, their services, whatever you want to call them. He started having yearly conventions, with the very first one being held in Cedar Point, Ohio in 1922. He also made a very stunning prediction that Abraham and Isaac, from the Bible, would be resurrected in 1925, marking the beginning of Christ's 1,000-year reign, the millennium. You remember, if you watch the 𝗪𝗪 novels that I've summarized, I'll link those up here, talks about the 1,000-year, the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Well, in 1925 is when this was supposed to begin. I can safely say, speaking to it from 2021, he missed that prediction. But of course it was spiritual. So who knows if he made it or not. In 1931, at a Columbus, Ohio convention is where he first said the word Jehovah's Witnesses, based on Isaiah 43:10, "Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servants who I have chosen, that ye may know and believe in me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me." And hence, the term Jehovah's Witnesses was adopted in 1931. he made it the official name. He used it to kind of make his followers stand out from other followers. He basically eliminated what was established under Russell as elections. That's how he got his seat. He just did away with that, and it became literally a mini theocracy. So he did away with democracy, open elections within the organization, and now you are appointed by God, with Rutherford being God's ultimate representation on earth. So he could appoint whoever he wanted to. Does that sound familiar? A lot of churches operate off that. A lot of theocratic governments operate off that. Yeah, it's getting weird up in here. Anyway, this kind of was the mainstay. And then they started talking again about the doctrine of the 144,000 and how his little flock of 144,000 of them were going to be the only ones that would survive Armageddon and go into heaven. Everybody else that did not believe would be killed on earth. The other people that did believe would be reborn on earth and live on earth, while only the 144,000 would make it to heaven and not have to live through Armageddon. Now listen, the Atlantic has a countdown of 10 things that make a cult. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Jehovah's Witnesses tick off about 8 of them, because they get real personal with it, and we're about to dive into that. They spread throughout Europe, into Germany, particularly after the Great War that they weren't allowed to participate in. There was a lot of draft dodging, burning of draft cards. They also determined in a 10-year period between 1931 and 1941 that even saluting a country's flag was a form of idolatry. Celebrating birthdays or any holiday was a form of idolatry. And so now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of how they control their members. No birthdays, no holidays, no public service, no military service, can't even salute or say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which is why a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses children are homeschooled. Shortly before his death in 1942, Rutherford coined the phrase Kingdom Halls, and it was determined that the leadership of every local organization would draw up a Kingdom Hall, that as witnesses they were to be a discreet slave class to God and to serving the church or the organization. The people that work full-time for the church, they are given a basic living expense of a basic monthly stipend, but everyone else that works outside the church are called part-timers, and they are to do it purely as volunteer, and they are required to give a certain amount of their income to the church. I don't know the exact amount, but I'm almost certain it's over 10%. So basically, it's also drawn into strict theocratic control. The people that are appointed to the leadership roles are appointed by God, and therefore they're all males, because they believe that a woman's place is very much in the home, to be subservient to men. This is 𝗟𝗍𝗍𝗁's wet dream. They literally believe that there's a huge separation between men and women, that we are living in the end times, so there is no need for anyone to pursue a career, to pursue any kind of gain for yourselves, and so any type of higher education is basically discouraged. A lot of homeschooling goes on, very little college. The only ones that go to any type of further schooling with the blessings of the church are men to study trades. So they'll let you be a mason, a plumber, anything that can be useful in the here and now. Maybe a couple of doctors, nurses, lawyers. But for the most part, higher education is discouraged. I find that to be a huge indicator of how controlling a religion is, whether you can call it a cult or not. Lots of times if they won't or discourage education, it's because they're scared you're going to go out and learn something other than what they want you to know. And so people that are faithful to this are very sheltered. It's just like when we talked about 𝗥𝗶𝗁 movement. They're very sheltered, and the schools that they go to are chosen by their elders because they probably know that these schools aren't going to teach them anything but a useful trade. And women don't even talk about going to school unless it's for something maybe like nursing or something like that, and then you're brought back into the fold. So yeah, it's very restrictive, as most cults are. In 2001, it was estimated by the New York Times that parishioners donate in excess of $950 million to the society, and that was in 2001. So this is a fairly rich church that uses their money to control its members, proselytize, bring new members in, because you got to remember, a lot of people leave these types of religions, especially kids that are brought up in it and see, maybe what, if they are allowed to go to public school, what their schoolmates are doing. And so you have a lot of people that leave the church, so they have to continuously bring people in to keep their coffers up and to keep them growing. Estimated that their membership is in the tens of millions worldwide. So they believe that the only person that God ever created was Jesus, a distinct man who did die and physically resurrect. He was killed on a stake, though, not a cross. And that Satan was a perfectly formed angel that rebelled. Everyone else on earth was created by Jesus at some point in history. They also believe that, like as I said, any type of patriotism, a loyalty to one's community, anything like that is idolatry. They also believe because you were handcrafted by Jesus himself that you should never add to or take away from your perfect body. So things like transplants, blood transfusions, that's a no-no. Certain types of medical care in general is a no-no. It's very much about accepting your fate. So as you can imagine, a lot of diseases go untreated. As I said, they don't believe in education. A lot of children are encouraged to drop out of school or go under homeschooling, which is very lacking outside of skills that they think should be assigned to certain genders. And probably one of the most graphic and gruesome things about this cult is their emphasis on shunning or disfellowshipping people that question anything. And along with that is countless stories of sexual and physical abuse that are covered up within the witnesses every year. Children, this is where we get into that doctrine of situational immorality, that it represents to harm a child in any way, shape, or form, represents situational immorality. And this is kind of covered up by virtue of it has to be witnessed by another person for it to actually be true. And anything that's done about it is up to the local elders. So as you can imagine, a lot of it is covered up. And that's also a reason why a lot of children flee this religion as soon as they get old enough. 𝗟𝗏𝗃, a great atheist channel that I watch a lot. Check him out. He's a former Jehovah's Witness. He has some just stories that will curl your hair. Anyway, that's kind of the long and short of it. Definitely some weird beliefs, at least if you are a non-believer like me or a mainstream type of Christian. Very, very weird beliefs and goings on. And they're still out there. They're still growing. So that knock on the door can mean a whole lot more than just wasting a little bit of your time. It can take you into something that you definitely don't want to be a part of. So anyway, that's a quick delve into the Jehovah's Witnesses. Are they a cult? Yes, absolutely they are a cult. Beware. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll be back with you really, really soon. Until next time, keto and cry.